Rachel Pedersen, let's start with your woman-owned story.
So basically, I'll keep the first part of it a little bit light, but I actually grew up in poverty, the daughter of a pastor, and my mom was a worship leader. So life, I didn't really know growing up that there were a lot of options. I didn't know you could go and build a multi-million-dollar company or even $100,000 company. To me, like making $10 an hour was the epitome of I've made it, you know? So I was like, okay, I have no clue what I'm going to do with my life. I graduated high school with a 2.6. I had like no options available, no scholarships, no rich, uncle who's going to come in and save the day. So I became a hairstylist. And as a hairstylist, I fell in love, by the way. I love hair. I think hair is so cool and fascinating. What I loved most about it was connecting with clients on a really deep level, understanding the psychology of people and how their minds operate, and then also being able to basically create art every single day. But it was as I was working as a hairstylist, a client came in one day and I was giving her the best highlights of my life.
Okay.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. And she says, we're talking about Shark Tank, and I'm talking about, oh, I love like discovering valuations and all of that. And she's like, do you know marketing? And I was like, I post stuff on social. And when I do, clients come in, I'll post a before and after of extensions. And suddenly 3 people book. And she's like, could you help me? And I'm like, help you with what? I'm helping you with your hair. And she says, no, could you like show me your tweeter? And I said, show my,
You're like,
my
I'm a pastor's daughter. Okay.
yeah. I was like, we don't do that at this kind of salon. And but she goes, the little blue bird thing. And I was like, oh, Twitter, that's what you mean. Yeah, I can help you with your Twitter. So I go over to their house. These are strangers to me, by the way, and they live in one of the nicer houses I've been in my life at that point in time. And I was just like, this is incredible. They sit me down. They say, we want to work with you for marketing. Can you help us with our social media? And I say, yeah. And I was completely unqualified. No background in it, no real experience working in it, no ability to even write a resume that honestly said a single thing about my marketing knowledge or experience. But they hired me because they saw something. At least that's what they told me later because I asked.
Yeah.
They said, we saw kind of a drive and a passion and a desire to grow, and we wanted to take a chance on you. So that was my very first client. And here we are today. Feel free to tell me where else we want to go from that there.
Yeah. Now, how long were you a hairdresser, a hairstylist before you got your first opportunity as a social media consultant, essentially?
Oh, 4 or 5 years. Yeah. And I was a single mom actually at that point when I became a hairstylist. So at 21 years old, I had a daughter. That was pretty normal, by the way, in my neighborhood. I didn't know anyone who wasn't a single mom. And so I was basically going through hair school on food stamps, welfare, just trying to get through the day each day. And it was so hard. It was one of the hardest things I've done. And taking the bus an hour and a half each way to get to Minneapolis. Uh-huh. And so when I became a hairstylist, it was incredible for me because I thought this is wild. I get to work each day and take home cash each day, and I get free hair products. Yes, please.
Yeah, all day, all
Yeah.
day. Okay, so this is very cool. So you start, so presumably this client had seen your Twitter or had seen something. Like, how did she know to ask you to
You
do
know,
that?
it was the first time I had ever done her hair. This was one of those weird destiny moments. She was supposed to see someone else. She had never been at that salon before. That stylist was out sick that day, and randomly she ended up in my chair. She had no clue who I was, and I had never met her either. And
Mhm.
suddenly, just this connection formed right away. And I honestly think it was destiny pulling me in a certain direction.
Mm. And how many years ago was this? Like, when was it that you got this first customer client?
Oh, okay, let's see. I was pregnant with my second. So I would say 11, 12 years ago. 12 years.
Okay. So 12 years,
Hmm.
we're going to talk about, what's kind of happened, and some of the specific strategies that you used.
Yeah.
But 12 years later, you've built an 8-figure business. You have
Yep.
3 million followers across these social platforms. Can you give us the Coles notes of client number one, asking you to show her your tweeter, to an 8-figure business? Like, what were some of the big kind of
Wow.
developmental milestones for your business
Yeah.
along the way?
So basically, one of the big developmental milestones for me was, believe it or not, I had never owned anything expensive in my life except for a pair of shears. Um, so I was sitting with this client, this first client, and she handed me a book. She said, I read this book and I thought of you. And the book was, I can't remember the name of the book, but it's about the cost cutters or the Great Clips gal who was a stylist and went on to work her way up and become the CEO. And she said, this reminds me of you. And it kind of just like ingrained something new in my brain. And she would give me incredible gifts and take me on trips to marketing expos. And I was like, this is wild. And they truly did it from the kindness of their heart. And I cannot believe it, like how impactful that was. Now, you can't go from working as a hairstylist, supporting 2 kids with my then husband, to just suddenly jumping into marketing. It was too big of a risk. So I decided to go for jobs in marketing. And I started just applying left and right, left and right. And finally, I got an interview and they said, how much money do you want to make per year? And for some crazy reason, I said 64,000. Never had made that a day in my life. They're like, done. We're hiring you. We're so excited. And I'm like, this is like an Inc. 5,000 tech company. This is crazy. So I said, yes, I took it on. I'm working my tail off there. I'm finishing all my work in like an hour a day. And I started getting bored. And that's a dangerous thing for someone who's got kind of la chispa, as I like to say. you know. But it was wild because I got to use all that extra time to listen to podcasts about entrepreneurs, great women, leaders. What does it mean to run your own business? And that's where I learned everything. And I started securing clients on my lunch break, after work, before work, late at night, sometimes during work, usually not because I didn't want to get busted. And before you know it, it took, I want to say like 6 months, and I replaced my salary with the clients on the side. From there, I left my 9 to 5. Right as I was leaving my 9 to 5, I posted something and it became a viral post. It reached 11.3 million people. There was like 69,000 shares on this post. Celebrities were sharing it. And I also was accepted. I emailed Ariana Huffington myself and said, can I become a Huffington Post contributor? And she said, I would love to have you. And all these things just started aligning again. From there, I replaced my husband's salary in another, I want to say less than 6 months. So he came home from work full time, and now we're both working at home. By 2017, we had crossed our first million, and that was combined. And then it was just 1 year later, I hit my first million in a year. So it was wild how quickly we scaled. I mean, it was exhausting, but
Yeah. Yeah.
lots of work. It was a really cool, like whirlwind journey. And then I started to hire more and more team members, brought in tested different business partners, didn't find the right one till this year, and just continued to grow. Launched my education business in 2018. From there, that also scaled, and soon they were each doing 1 million a year.
And
Now,
so you've got your consulting business where you're doing primarily social media consulting for brands and companies. And then you have your education business. And I was telling you in the green room, I have taken one of your programs, and the few videos that I've had that have done over 1 million in views have been from stuff that I learned from you. So I talk about it a lot. It's really, yeah, it really does work.
thank you.
So you've got both of these companies.
Yep.
They're doing over 1 million. Very cool. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And it wasn't all like rainbows and sunshine from there. You always think, okay, if we did this much this year, 900% growth this year, it's going to happen. It does not happen every single year. There are new milestones. And like for me, I had to learn so much about being a leader and myself. And that came later, thankfully. But I was not a great leader at first.
Mm.
I really struggled with it. So we went up and down and up and down and up and down and kind of continued to grow our way to some really cool things like hitting 100,000 YouTube subscribers. That one was cool because it got me a lot of cred with the kids, my kiddos.
Yes, totally.
Yes, and then we actually became an Inc. 5000 Midwest company. We were number, I want to say 16 on that list. So I have that award over there. And there were just all these cool moments and things that happened. And we crossed 8 figures, which blows my mind, in 2022.
Amazing. Now I'm curious, and I want to we'll get into, don't worry, guys, we're going to get into brass tacks and tactical how to here in a minute. But I have to ask you, so you said were able to create a lot of growth and success.
Mhm.
And you say, I actually really struggled to lead. Like that was something that was hard for me that I had to learn how to do. Um, what was hard? What was the hardest part of leading? Like what was the easiest part of growth for you? And what
Yeah.
was the hardest part of leading for you?
I'll go with the easiest part of leading first is I love being around people, not all the time, but I love connecting with people. And that was really fun. But that sometimes led to like a party environment, like let's just
Mm.
hang out and play video games or whatever. And I was almost distracting myself from the real truth
Yeah.
of what it is to lead a company. But the hardest part was that I did not truly learn who I was, why I had these weird quirks, a whole bunch of things that can make it really challenging to lead until 2022. So I will tell you, I don't believe that I was a great leader until 2022.
What's different about you in 2024 and 2025 versus 2022? Like if you were to look at your leadership and how you lead, what would be the most obvious things that have changed since then?
Oh my goodness. So the first is one that I don't keep a secret. I was diagnosed bipolar in 2022. And so I was able to learn, oh, this is why in these moments I feel X, Y, and Z. I was also diagnosed with CPTSD from our childhood. And that allowed me to see, like, okay, I've got these triggers and these irrational feelings of fear. And I'll cut people out because I'm like, I'm scared. I don't want them around me, or I'm not acting like a 25, 30, 35, whatever year old leader. I'm acting like a 7 year old girl who's scared. So I was allowing that to carry into my leadership. Some of the biggest things that are different is I like to always kind of make sure it's clear what expectations are. So we need to write everything down. We need to have timelines, deadlines, communication all the time. And I like it to be written so I can always refer to it.
Yeah.
And then another major difference back then, I was really bad. I had a temper, a wild temper. Did you know
I
that?
No, like I'm
Oh,
shocked. Totally. I would not,
yeah.
as somebody who kind of has kind of, consumed your content. Oh my gosh. I
I still have one, but it never shows itself anymore, thankfully. But my friends always say, like, if there was a bar fight, I would be the one they'd expect to like be the first one to jump up and be like, what? So, but that temper was out of control. So I would blow up at people, my business partners, my love partner, my team members, like, and it would be for maybe they did do something seriously wrong, but
Yeah.
my reaction was disproportionate. So I was kind of harsh,
Yeah.
really harsh on quite a few people back then, and I had a lot to figure out. Today, I actually don't have that same type of temper. Like I said, it would only show up in like a bar fight or something. I don't know.
You're
But
like, I'll start it and I'll end it too.
yes. So, I went through years. I've been in some type of therapy since I was super young, and I took it really seriously in 2020 through 2025. So I am very serious about it. I've done 1 month inpatient stays, and I'm like, we're gonna get this figured out. I don't want to be broken, and I don't want to break other people in any way. And
Yeah.
so I feel like that's allowed more of like who I really am,
Mm.
like the kind person, this person that
Yeah.
wants to help others come to life. And so I know genuinely every single one of my team members and everyone who interacts with me feels safe now.
Yeah.
It's a cool thing.
It is really cool. And I love that you brought this up because I think one of the hardest things that I have found about being a leader is that you do go to school in public. So you have power and authority, you are able
Yes.
to generate means, and all of these things are really awesome. At the same time, you're going to school in public, and it feels that
Yeah.
when you, because of that power, if things aren't right with you,
Yep.
other people pay. And and we all, there's nowhere, no leader has an unscathed track record in that way. And I don't know if you can relate to this, but it's like, if you're actually a compassionate person,
Mhm.
sometimes it's hard to look back a little bit, even though you can have a lot of compassion for yourself and you're like, but oh my gosh, I really wish I didn't do that. Or it's just so, it's a challenging part of being a leader, dealing with the parts of ourselves that are a little broken and
Mhm.
that people experienced in meaningful ways.
I completely relate to that. And the biggest thing I have to remember is that who I am now is the biggest testament. Who I've been for several years now is it's my husband can attest to it, my team can attest to it, my business partner can attest to it. They're like, Rachel's very, very consistent and she's kind and she's warm and she takes time to like breathe through a problem before she's ever going to, snap at somebody. And we can trust her in every situation to
Yeah.
like lead and listen to people's perspectives. And so I just trust that who I am, who I've always been, but now more wholly,
Yeah.
is going to speak volumes, and people will speak to that on my behalf if they hear
Mhm.
stories of, well, did you know she one time threw a controller or whatever, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that
So,
time she really lost it. Yeah, no, I
yeah.
100% get that.
Hmm.
So let's talk about, what you're known for. And I think the first time that I heard about you was, maybe I was listening to a Russell Brunson podcast or something. He had talked about what you were doing. And I think this was when you were really rolling. You were really starting to make a name for yourself as a content creator and social media thinker and expert and trainer and teacher and all of these things.
Yeah.
Um, so let's talk about, because what you ultimately did was build an audience across your platforms of over 3 million people.
Mhm.
And that's really powerful, because when you have leads, when you have an audience and you have leads, things are not perfect, but they're a lot easier.
Yes.
So I would love for you to talk. We're going to talk about first about how you built that audience, and then also how you've been able to really crack the code on something that a lot of people are not able to do, which is, how do you create money from
Mm.
an audience like that? So let's talk about building the audience. When you look at building 3 million followers across multiple platforms,
Yep.
if you were to distill it down to one or two strategies that were the most effective for you, the most important things you did, what were they?
Number one, if you don't have the money, you better have the time. That's a huge one. Um, it takes time, and I mean consistent time every single day. To build this entire network, I spent 2 to 3 hours every day, Monday through Friday, creating content, and that's with no breaks. That's just boom, one TikTok, boom, one TikTok, now YouTube, okay, now Facebook post. And I think sometimes people want the type of growth they see that I've had, and they don't want to put in that level of time to make it happen because they're like, that's a lot. It was a lot. Sometimes I woke up at 5 a.m. and did my makeup all cute and went somewhere where I could record easily. And it's okay to not spend 2 to 3 hours a day, but then don't expect 3 million followers across
Yeah.
social. And
You know
it's
what's
zero.
so fascinating about that? So
Yeah.
I was in a call the other day with Dan Martell, and he was saying they crossed 3 million. He was saying, I crossed 3 million in followers this year. And he said
Wow.
the biggest thing was that he had had lunch with Alex and Layla Hormozian, their content guy. And Alex said, you need to be willing to put in 4 hours a day.
It's so funny because so Alex and I, we knew each other way back in Russell's inner circle. And I remember him saying that to me and it stuck out. And I wasn't willing to put in 4, but I was
Yeah.
willing to put in 2 to 3.
Yeah.
And that was the year that everything just shot up. And I haven't even been as consistent for the last 2 years, but I still reap the benefits of those couple of years, what I learned from that.
Okay, so let's break this down because there does seem to be something fairly significant. Because now it's three, at least three different people who have amassed very significant audiences,
Yes.
like over 3 million people across network, networks who are putting in the hours.
Yep.
Um, so it was about 2 years that you're putting in 2 to 3 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
been 3 years. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think no, yes, it was 3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was that like? Because what were things that you didn't do during that time, and how did you? Because you were running a consulting business
Yep.
and a teaching business at that time. So I'm curious about sort of some of the trade-offs that you would have had to make during that time in order to free up the 2 to 3 hours a day. Like practically, what did that kind of look like?
A few different things. I did give up sleep sometimes, and part of that is just because I'm a mom.
Yeah.
So you're already gonna never quite have enough sleep and you get used to it. I definitely, at that point in time, I remember not having very many friends. I only had like one or two total friends, and that was shocking. And they lived far away because we connected on the internet.
Yeah.
So I remember there were so many days where I felt so lonely, and I was like, I don't have a rich friendship group, and I hate this feeling. And all these people are like, it reminds me of the song Lucky from Britney Spears, isn't she lovely? But she cries in her lonely heart. Um, but I remember that was a big thing. I also had to trade off. Oh, this is a huge one. So thankfully, the revenue actually caught up very quickly during that time, and we'll talk obviously about that. But I had to trade off basically cooking any meals from scratch. So we had carry out 2 to 3 meals every day. I remember at that time we were spending an ungodly amount on carry out, and I always felt guilty about that. And I also had no hobbies
Yeah.
besides reading and things that advanced this. My puppy's gonna come crawl into the scene. So it was really tough. And I remember thinking, I'm doing this for something, like I'm not going back to how I used to live. I'm going to make this happen in a really big way. But
And did you see
ah,
steady audience growth, or was it more like hockey sticks? Like when you sort of, if you take yourself back to that time, because a lot of, sometimes you're putting in a lot up front and you're not seeing it. And that's when people quit. So I'm curious, like did the audience growth keep pace? Was it sort of, again, steady hockey sticks? What did that look like?
Um, at 30 days, I always, and I've done this experiment several times where I go really hard anytime I like kind of fall off for a little bit, which is easier to do. I think, no, it's just easy for everyone to do.
Yeah.
So at 30 days, I would see like a spike. And then at 60 days, I would see another spike. And then at 90, it would start to take off. But the real takeoff is unpredictable. You don't know when it's going to happen. And I notice it just goes hockey stick like that.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
crazy cool, but there's a flat line period where you
Yeah.
think this isn't even working until it is.
Mm.
Mhm.
Now, money or time, so you put in 2 to 3 hours a day. What was the next part of building that 3 million audience that was key?
Oh, the next part was something that I didn't even consciously know that I was doing at that time. And I now have a name for it. It's a strategy that I use. It is called basically like the 4 V's. I also sometimes like to call it like the late night show
Mm.
strategy.
Yep.
When you're just going business, 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 trying to get people into your business, they feel it and they're turned off. But if you can show more sides of your life and more aspects to who you are more likely to grow. So people might come for something completely different and be like, I want to be in this now. So when I was started doing this process, I was creating content around kind of anything and everything, including some really embarrassing topics. But I was like, I'm just going to try everything and see what happens. I showed off my mom's stomach, and those went massively viral. And then guess what? People were like, this is who I want to learn from to start a business.
Mm.
Um, every single topic can bring people into your ecosystem. And a lot of people will say you only want to attract like qualified people. Not true. Not true. You want to attract as many people as you can because you never know who someone's sister, friend, relative, etc. might be. And you also don't know who they might be someday,
Yeah.
which I think is big. So I would do the 4 V's: value, variety, vulnerable, and viral.
Ah, okay.
Hmm.
Very cool. All right. So another question around that, which I think is in some ways it sounds like you were like, I am going to create content. I'm going to be okay with building a personal brand,
Hmm.
understanding that that personal brand and the benefits of having a brand like that, that's naturally going to extend
Yeah.
to my agency, to my courses. Was that sort of the overarching philosophy?
I built as a personal brand at first only because that's what I started everything as. I actually think I might have evolved my hair page into the business page or the
Oh,
personal
interesting.
brand.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was all just Rachel Pedersen,
Yeah. Yeah.
and the Mrs. Peterson. But
Yeah.
I did it naturally, and then came to a point where I had to make a choice, and I kind of saw a lot of brands using like logos and business names, and tend to struggle with growth for
Yeah.
longer,
Yeah.
significantly longer, unless it's like an attractive character or something that people feel like they can call themselves as, like funnel hackers, right? Everyone wants to be a funnel hacker, so they'll follow Funnel Hacker TV.
Yeah.
But
Or
I
like Betches. I don't know if you follow them on
yes,
Instagram. They're
yes,
so funny.
I know. I watch them way too much.
I watch them and this other one, and it's really people don't judge. It's called fuckboyproblem.s.
Oh, I
They're
think I've
so
seen that.
they're so funny. They're
Yes.
really it's not what you think, guys. It's not what you think. It's really funny. But yeah, so stuff like that, it's like high attitude. It's very there's something about it that you just kind of you know that you're with a group of people that you have something in common with. It could be like what you find funny.
Yep.
But yeah, like I'm much more likely to follow a
Yep.
person.
Yeah, every single time. And
Yeah.
so I think what's interesting is if you look at everyone who has grown rapidly, they all grow rapidly under either their personal brand or their business built as a personal brand.
Yeah.
So even though there are later on problems that come
Yeah.
into play, it's worth it if your goal is to build several hundred thousand or several million or more.
Yeah. Now, I just want to go back to the 2 to 3 hours every day.
Hmm.
And we don't have to get into the detail of your systems because they are fairly detailed and we can't, people can go and learn about them through your materials and so on. But curious, what was your posting like as you were for folks who are serious about building an audience? You know
Hmm.
what I mean? What was your posting schedule looking like? And for folks who maybe today are looking at that, I'm curious what worked for you.
Okay, so like frequency and amount,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
okay. So back in the day, I did, and I'm trying to get back on this routine again, and it's really hard because I'm
It
like,
must be
yeah,
because you're
I'm
kinda like, "Well, I have this big audience. I don't really."
I know, but
Yeah,
what am I missing out on if
yeah.
don't do it?
True.
But and I'm older now, like, okay.
Yes.
So, um, number one YouTube video per day. Sometimes those were edited, sometimes they were live streamed.
Mhm.
Mostly they were like cheap editing and cheap
Yep,
camera.
yep,
I did one podcast per day. One, and those are short. They're like
yep,
10 to 20 minutes. Um, One email, and I tried for 5 a week, and generally speaking, that went over pretty well.
yep,
One post in each of my big groups, and I think at that time I had 5. So something of value, motivation, etc., but it had to be real time. Um, 3 to 7 TikToks per day. Back then, we didn't have Reels, and I hated
yeah.
Instagram, so I didn't do anything on Instagram.
Gosh.
I know.
If I could turn back time.
I'm like, what was I thinking? Now it's
Right.
great. It's what I
Yeah,
want.
yeah,
And then I did 3 to 5 pieces on LinkedIn per day, 3 to 7 pieces on Facebook per day, my page, and 1 to 5 really good pieces of content on my Facebook profile.
okay.
And most of it wasn't necessarily like repurposed. Most of it was in real time,
Yeah,
but some could be
yeah,
repurposed, just
yeah.
not the video.
Okay, fascinating. And so this is like the volume of production that you were putting in to build that audience. And it's interesting because a lot of people will put in an hour a day.
Hmm.
and get nowhere near those results. And that's, so it's interesting, just that extra, the really like going pro with it, as Dan was saying, like the decision to turn pro with it, to put your
Yeah.
all into it is the thing that really drives the results versus putting in an hour a day and getting very mediocre results, which is, I think, is what most people do.
Yeah. I think it's that whole concept of volume. Like
Yeah.
you go, 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 go. It how can it not attract
Yeah.
something? I
Yeah.
really truly believe that. But the other thing that is big as well, and this is huge. So a lot of times people will say, I can't record a YouTube video as fast as you can. And I'm like, what do you think my process is? Do you think I have it all scripted and this team comes in and sits me down and films me and edits it for me? It doesn't work like that. I am working off of like 5 bullet points and I'm just talking from my heart to the camera. And I either go live or post it right after with minimal edits. So it's a fast process. And I don't think I would have been able to do that much if it hadn't been that style.
Yeah. Okay. So money or time, the four V's. If you had to
Mhm.
pick one more thing that really helped you build that multi-million member audience, is there something else that stands out to you?
Yes, absolutely. So studying psychology.
Mm.
I need to write a book on this because how psychology applies to like going viral and understanding not just the usual things we know, like, reciprocity or whatever, but really and truly sitting down, nerding out, studying, stop scrolling on social until you understand why those things are working. Why is this going viral? What's driving it? Um, it's an amazing thing, and at first, I didn't even have the names for what the psychological phenomenons were,
Mm.
for all the different ways that you can do it. There's probably a couple hundred different ways that you can make content take off, and all of them are related to specific parts of the human brain and human behavior, which is
Mm.
fascinating. Um, and so study psychology. I love studying psychology and learning about phenomena that is happening and weird things that can't quite be explained, but just inevitably happen. A great starting place is like anything Malcolm Gladwell. It's going to be very science driven, but I love the fact that he takes things that are happening that we don't understand and turns it into this is the psychological reason why it's happening. Now, today, I spend a lot more time reading research papers at night. I actually log into like the psych research portals and I just sit and read them because I'm like, this is so cool. Did you know that humans can't help but do this when they see this? Or.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Is there like a go-to for you? So if you're like, you know what, I haven't given I haven't showed up for the people in a while. I think I'm gonna try to go viral with something, or is there like, is there a psychological thing that you're like, you know what, this is one of my favorites. I love how when I do this, it create, like, is there a driver that's your favorite, like a personal
Um,
driver that's your fave?
Yes, so Divide and Attract is my favorite. I give all of them my favorite, like my own names. Divide and
Yeah.
Attract is one of my favorites. So I know that if I go very boldly out there with something, 50% of people are going to love it and 50% are going to hate it. So if I need to go viral, I'm going to find a topic that pisses off some people and makes other people love it.
Yeah.
And so those ones, just don't check the comments. Just know
Yeah.
it's a way that humans naturally behave when they see something they disagree with.
Oh my gosh, do not check the comments.
Do
Do
not.
not, do not.
Nope.
Exactly. Yeah, just don't,
Yeah.
forget about it. Why?
Not
Why
worth
would
it.
you? Yeah,
Yeah.
not worth it. Okay, so good. So you use these strategies to build the audience, and I appreciate you sharing the time,
Mhm.
because I think there's a lot online right now which is all about ease and how, don't work hard, work smart. And it's kind
Mhm.
of like, actually, when you hear folks who have built audiences that
Mhm.
produce, like major assets, they have actually put in the time, and the money.
Yes.
They've actually kind of put in both in many ways,
Yeah.
but when you don't have the money, you do have to have the time.
Yep.
Yeah.
I will say one thing that's really big is it's okay to want ease and it's okay to like not want to follow that. And you're like, what I've got is one video 3 times a week. That's great. That can sometimes support a side hustle
Yeah.
or getting your first 3 to 5 clients, but that's just not going to scale you to
Yeah.
likely where you want to go if you're listening to this type of podcast.
Yeah. Okay. So let's then talk about how Rachel Pedersen built an audience of 3 million and did not become a broke influencer. Okay.
Yeah.
It's like, so the big thing was that you were actually able to monetize.
Hmm.
And some people can, some people can't. And it's interesting because you have built a big audience, which is not only going to have your sort of ideal buyers in it. So how
Yep.
did you turn that into an 8-figure business?
Okay, so at first it was throwing stuff at the wall and hoping it worked.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna be honest. I look back at some of my early offers and I'm like, why did I think that would be okay? Like,
I know.
I,
What? And
yeah,
what was I even offering here? I'm not
yes,
clear. Sometimes, I'll look
all
back
the
and be like,
time.
how I got a customer, I do not know. Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the big things that I recognize is if I'm going to go in mass, I have to make sure that I have something that makes sense for more people than just people who can afford me as clients. When I went viral the first time, that 11.3 million, I was absolutely shocked, Eleanor, because I thought it was going to be like my payday, my lucky ticket, and I was going to get like, at least 1,000 clients.
Yeah.
I actually didn't get any extra applications for clients. And I was like,
So, yeah.
so I literally gained on just one platform 9,000 followers overnight and it's still moving. What do I do? Next day, nothing. Next day, nothing. So I thought, what if I offered something that makes more sense to more people? And that's where I thought of really getting my education out there. And that
Mm,
was when I offered my educational program for, I want to say $29 a month. I offered it in the next few months.
yeah.
Yep.
Now, one of the things that I find interesting, about your model is your pricing strategy, actually, because I actually think that's probably a part of that. Pricing is a part of making something that's accessible for more people,
Yep.
and so presumably, through your consulting business, pricing was obviously a lot higher,
Yep.
potentially different type of clientele or sort of the top percentage in terms of revenue or affordability, or income, of your total audience.
Yeah.
How did you look at pricing? How do you look at pricing? Because you have a lot of different programs and courses. Like, what's your philosophy there?
Um, my this is going to sound weird, but my philosophy is something for everyone.
Mm,
And I know that's weird, and some people say don't do that, but I like to study what a lot of brands are doing that are outside of our space. And I was really studying how brands like, let's say, Dior or Chanel or Louis Vuitton, even, they have, well, Louis Vuitton, this one's not true for.
yeah,
They have affordable perfume that's sold in Sephora. There's a reason for that because anyone feels good when they say, I am wearing Dior. I am wearing Chanel. Everyone feels good when they have a keychain from, Burberry or from Gucci. Like it feels so good. I can't even tell you how many people like are so excited about having, shoes from Hermes and they can't afford the bags
yeah,
because we all love being able to tap into something that feels bigger or more powerful or more luxurious or something like that. So my big thought process was and I still follow this to this day, if I offer something kind of for everyone, then people get to say, I was in Rachel Peterson's program. And they're
yeah,
like, oh, and they say it with pride. And I'm like, that makes me so happy. It makes me
yeah.
happy that it's not just the 1% of the 1% that can work with me and say that.
Well, it's also interesting how your relationship, with your audience changes when they can have something that they can buy,
Mm-hmm.
versus, and there's something accessible that they can buy. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, I totally see that. So when you think about sort of your price points,
Yeah.
in something for everyone, like where does it fit? Like what are your sort of different tier overall, like the sort of the chunks? So you've got some stuff that's like under a few $100. Like what does it look like for somebody with an audience like yours?
It's pretty scattered, which is kind of
Yeah.
fun. We have stuff as low as $7. We
Yep.
have things like programs that are 14, 27, 37. My book, which I think is 34. Um, programs that are 97. We've had programs that are 197, programs that are 497, programs that are 997. And then we even go up to, we used to have a 12,000, but I dropped that and instead put a little split in the middle between
Yeah.
high and low, and I'm going to be doing more of that because I'm noticing people either want to spend a lot or save.
Yes.
So yeah, so my coaching, my high-end coaching is 25,000, and then my consulting clients, it is anywhere from 47,000 to 247,000 depending on how much access you get to me versus my partners versus my teams.
And so when you look at that across an audience, sort of out of curiosity, across an audience like that, like where does in most businesses, it's the top end of the offers that make the lion's share of the revenue. Is that true in yours? Like, is that the same how that is split, or is it a bit more equal among them?
I
Just
would
out of
say that's
curiosity.
where the profit is created.
Yeah.
We don't spend any ads on any of our high tickets. It's a rule we've had. And that allows us to honestly just serve as much as we want and not feel like we have to, scrimp or pinch pennies or anything like
Yeah.
that. So they are where the profit comes from. And so it's also nice too, because if you ever get sick and tired of your high ticket clients, you can
Mm.
remember like, oh yeah, this is what funds everything beyond
Yes.
baseline. And
Yes.
then you're like, oh, I'm so much more grateful. Thank you for putting that
Yeah.
into perspective for me. Um, and then on this side, we do spend more in ads, but that's not where the costs come in. The costs come in from the heavy, heavy team that it takes to support. It's almost like a pyramid. The base
Yeah.
of the pyramid is where people don't spend as much, but that's where we also
Yeah.
have the majority of our employees and team members.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Okay. Very,
Yep.
very cool. Very cool. So
Mhm.
we've talked about something for everyone from a
Mhm.
monetization perspective, which is a very cool, very counterintuitive, very contrary to a lot of common advice, which kind of makes me love it more. Anything else that's been important to you from a monetization perspective?
Ooh, something that's big with monetization is you kind of need to put something out there every day. And this is really and truly, it's uncomfortable. It's something that isn't natural for us unless you've
Yeah.
worked in sales. And so you have to make sure that something somewhere is being put out that points to how people can work with you, get something, etc. Because it's all great and fun to build an audience until you're spending thousands maintaining that audience. And I wish more people realize like you have to make sure you're consistently making sales. So put something
Yeah.
out
Yeah. And when you
there.
talk about maintaining an audience, what does that mean?
Oh, everything from the team to handle emails, because you get tons of email responses for anything and everything. Um, to help
I
with,
can't log into.
yeah.
I'm like, give me one moment.
Yeah, I was like, I can't do this. My tech stack, my full tech stack is like 260 tools. And I am a huge fan of free and cheap, and some things just aren't.
Yeah.
My email software, oh my gosh, this blows my mind every day. It's like 2,600 a month right now, and they're like, we want to bump you up to 4,400. And I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. I hate spending money on that stuff.
I
So
know. So
yeah,
do I.
but
Yeah.
the software adds up really fast. Everything from funnels to um, the the little add-ons that like supposedly increase sales. Sometimes Facebook ads. Putting on events is not cheap or free. I wish most people realize that. If it's cheap or free, your leader is exhausted by
Yeah.
the time it starts.
Yes.
You know, so that requires team, and sometimes that requires setups, and that requires the expensive Zoom. And yeah, so I think that's always surprising for people. Everything costs money.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So this is so cool. So I think, my curiosity is where do you see things going next? Like as you look out over the course of the next 2 or 3 years, we're seeing, buyers are changing. There's a trust recession.
Yep.
The market is changing, it's maturing. What is front and center for you? Like what are the things that are most important to you over the next couple of years as you continue to grow and to evolve?
This is a big one, because that's absolutely true. Like celebrities are being deplatformed a little bit, big brands are being boycotted, influencers are getting mega hate. Um, the biggest thing is you have to look at every single move, as in, does this build or take away from the trust with my buyers? Sometimes when you are offering a sale, it does take away trust. But if it takes a lot of trust or it takes a big hit, or you're like, something in my gut says I'm not sure, like maybe don't do that. What I
Yeah.
mean by that is don't take the wrong sponsorships if you're an influencer. If you're a business owner, maybe you can find a way to get, sponsorships and or affiliate deals and offer as much value as you can for free. What it looks like for me right now is I'm really, really working on going really deep in my value. And maybe that's why I haven't been creating as much short form content and
Mhm.
stuff. I've been doing these really deep, long form posts that just explain things on kind of a different level than I've ever done before. And my
Yeah.
free events are just, it's more. And I just pour
Yeah.
in and pour in. And I'm like, if we can just really and truly every day ask ourselves, how can I increase the trust of my followers, my buyers, my, subscribers? I think that people are going to be just fine. But then also, when it comes to your pricing, recognize there's a massive divide happening between low cost and expensive. I think about me, I know what I'm willing to splurge on. It's not much. I'll just be honest. I hate
Yeah.
spending money on stuff. I'm
Yeah.
a huge thrifty person. So if you tell me your course is 27,000, I don't know if you're going to be able to build up enough trust for me. But if you
Yeah.
tell me that it's 27, I'll buy it and I will tell everyone I know about it.
Yeah.
Now, if that course works for me, I might consider the 27. So recognize there's
Yeah.
a growing divide in how people spend.
Yeah, that's interesting. We actually saw it this year, like price points.
Mhm.
Was sort of, and guys, I'm not saying that $400 is a bad price, by the way. Like this
Yeah.
is not blanket, but we started to see that there was this like mid weird zone in pricing where if
Mhm.
you're trying to you're trying to make things accessible to new customers who are new to you, it really does need to be accessible.
Yes.
If they pause it all, if it's like $300 and they pause it all, and a
Mm.
lot of us will, even though we super respect the person, but it's like a
Yeah.
brand new thing and we're not sure. It's just not
Yep.
worth it. Like, I have completely seen that and couldn't agree more. Yeah.
Yes. Totally.
Oh, so cool. Okay, so I guess the last question is, it was really cool sort of hearing the journey, like how far you've come and where you are today. I love, how you shared just some of the transformations that you had to make as a leader. I think that's so important to talk about because we don't.
Hmm.
And it's really key that we do. But what would you, if you were to go back and tell your earlier self, the one who just got asked about the tweeter? Like if you were to go back and give her a piece of advice, what would
Yes.
it be?
This is going to be really hard and not for the reasons that you think it's going to be. It is all actually quite achievable, accessible, it's possible, it's not out of reach. Like, sweet girl, you can do
Yeah.
this, I promise. And the thing is, it's going to be hard because you don't know who you are yet, and it's going to hurt. So, you can either take this opportunity now, or you can go and learn about yourself and then jump on in. That's
Mm,
what I would say.
yeah, very cool.
Yep.
Rachel, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. This was great.
Where would you like people to go to learn more about the work that you do? There's so many places,
Oh
really.
gosh. Yeah,
Yeah,
you can find me pretty much anywhere.
yeah.
Well, the biggest the
It's
biggest
true.
thing
Like we've been talking about.
I know. The best hub is my website. It's rachelpedersen.com. It is right now currently hideously ugly because it's out of date. So don't judge me for that. I'm learning website development to get it together because I'm being very particular about how I want it. So
Oh, I love that. I
thank
love that.
you.
Awesome.